So you said in your talk this morning that permaculture is a framework that pulls together for you all the different growing techniques that you use. Can you explain how that works, how that framework works, and how you've integrated the techniques?
You know, when we first found out about permaculture, we were almost convinced that it was a technique. We didn't understand it the way it is. That's why I understand why people can't figure out today what it is. But years after years, we redesigned the farm according to what we understood from the books we've read, because at that time we had no books in French, so we had to come to England and import some books and some knowledge. And I come for my PDC at the Sustainability Center. But we step by step understood it was the perfect frame to be able to insert all type of techniques. But the frame itself is enlightened by permaculture principles. If you understand those principles, then you can set a proper frame in which you can use whatever techniques you like under the condition that you're going to fulfill all permaculture principle needs somehow. So we didn't understand it right away. At first we thought that thanks to the techniques we would be able to produce more and we would be more efficient. And we have to step back and say, okay, if we have a proper design, if we create the right ecosystem with every element at its own place, with the proper interactions between the elements, then, and only at that time, we can, thanks to techniques that suit us, be efficient and highly productive. So we had to go back all the way around and understand that, first of all, just like permaculture says, you observe, second, you design, and then you act to a specific scale. I mean, you produce, you go from the biggest frame to the smallest detail.
So with the techniques, can you tell me just a quick overview of which techniques really work for you and how did you organise them or zone them on your land?
For the zoning, it's a bit specific, but I'm going to talk about it after that. For the techniques, I think the greatest source of inspiration has been Elliot Coleman's writing.
Yeah.
Actually, I found out about Elliot when I came here in England for my PDC, so I was so glad I bought that book that day and I brought it back.
That's 4 Seasons Harvest.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the Winter Harvest,
yes,
which was the key as how to grow all along winter. And that's one of the key of the viability of the system.
And you're using polytunnels specifically, or raised bed systems, heated beds, or just cover crop,
all of them.
All the
we have the polytunnels, but we don't move them.
Yeah.
Because when we put them on place, I mean, we didn't know about those techniques. And at first we created, we've installed a second polytunnel when we found out about Elliot with the slate and stuff, but it was too difficult to manage, so we gave up. But we have raised beds, we have hot raised beds, we have flat beds with a lot of companion planting, and that's far more inspired by the maraîchers parisiens, the vegetable market growers in Paris in the 19th century. And the intelligence behind the techniques really struck us at first. And we thought we would never be able to recall the quality and the technicity of their work, but we are almost there. So we're very happy about that. So the second source of inspiration after Elliot, but himself, he was inspired by the maraîchers parisiens, were those maraîchers parisiens. And also the raised bed techniques, the hugel culture, has been very strong. And at first, we kind of misunderstood what permaculture was all about, and we thought that permaculture was raised beds. And if you do permaculture, you need to have raised beds. And nowadays, a lot of people still think that if you do permaculture, you're a super gardener or super farmer and you have raised beds in there. which is completely false. But anyway, now we know that. And biodiversity, and enhancing the biodiversity, all the services rendered by the ecosystems was also the key. So planting a tree, digging a pond is as important as having the right technique to grow your food. What else? Cover crops. We are not that comfortable yet with cover crops, because in the first year we were struggling with the slug problem. So we didn't go straight into cover crops. We have some places with cover crops, but since we do everything by hand or with a horse, we are a bit fighting as how to destroy the cover crop at some point. So we're still in the middle of experimenting this, and I'm sure in a few years' time we'll find something that's satisfactory on that viewpoint. Otherwise, companion planting and density in planting is the key.
What fascinated me about your talk was this idea of reducing space and having this enormous amount of wild or uncultivated land. And that has been my experience on a third of an acre, to have a very intensive raised bed system, have perennial beds, and then have really a nature reserve in the whole rest of the garden. For us, with wildflower meadows and native hedgerows and trees. So how do you manage your, what we would call your sort of unfarmed, uncultivated area?
I wouldn't say that some areas are unfarmed, except for the woods. But you know, for instance, we have the oldest forest garden on the farm, which is somehow our zone 4, because we only go in there to harvest, to maintain. So the people don't go into that forest. So it's pretty good for biodiversity to develop. But I wouldn't say we don't farm some spaces, but we farm very respectfully, and we try not to invade too much the ecosystem that is on place. But since we don't have much pasture for the animal for grazing, we almost use every single plot of land in the main heart of the farm, at least, because we have a few hectares that are free from human beings, if I may say so, since there are woods, or we've got orchard also, in which we rarely step in. But we tend to farm either with the animals or the less intrusive way possible. That's it. We don't have a proper wild zone except for the woods.
Okay. You mentioned this idea that, well, it's not an idea, the scientific research that's shown that your farm is sequestering 6 times the carbon that perhaps a normal farm or even a woodland or pasture or even silvipasture sequesters. Can you tell me a little bit about your vision for the world? That, you know, how do you see that process of scaling up carbon sequestration and rolling it out as a policy for climate mitigation, not just adaptation?
Well, that's a tricky question, because it's so complicated nowadays to let the politics understand that carbon sequestration is the key to our future. It doesn't ring a bell, let's say it frankly.
Not yet.
But not yet. What does ring a bell nowadays in France is the fact that we need healthier products. We need to eat healthy products. We need to create employment with farming, because in France nowadays the average farm is 120 hectares or so. 120 hectares for one person, one job on 120. And we're proposing 1, 2, 3 maybe jobs on 1 hectare. That's a revolution. With the unemployment people we have in France, that's a revolution. I'm not saying here that everybody's gonna be a peasant tomorrow. Not everybody's appealed to the land. I would love to grow food, but a lot of people that we see coming on the farm for training session, really want to go back to this type of life. So there's great hope here. So I do believe that the most efficient way to scale up and spread the word would be to show that both you can create jobs, you're going to create economical value, and unfortunately, and it will come after, you're going to preserve the environment, you're going to sequester carbon, and maybe at the end of the day, you're going to save biodiversity. I'm very sad actually that we have to go through the economic door. That was what we had to acknowledge with all the experiments and the studies we led at the farm. When you talk about figures, everybody will raise their attention. If you talk about biodiversity, environment, that comes second, unfortunately. Even though for us, I think one of the best discovery of the past 12 years now is that in such a farm, if you manage to be environmentally efficient under that specific condition, you're going to be economically efficient. And that's a revolution, because nowadays people say, okay, first of all, you're going to be economically viable. And we say, no, first of all, you're going to be environmentally friendly, and then only you can be economically viable. So that's a key, but I know it's difficult to be heard that way yet.
But, you know, the whole concept of regeneration inevitably creates economic yields.
I'm 100% convinced, but unfortunately the lawmakers are not convinced yet.
Not yet. So, is there anything else that you would like to say to the movement all over the world to encourage, inspire, and also in a way to authenticate the many people who have devoted their lives to spreading this message?
First of all, I shall thank them, because when we first started, Charles and myself, it was 2006, in France at least, there was hardly anything, no information at all about permaculture. And all along the way, despite the lack of information, it was always very clear in our heart and souls that permaculture was the key to many, many, many problems in our world. So we need pioneers to be able to endure all those tough times that we had to go through at the farm. And I think what was difficult at first for us is that we kind of tried to reconcile or concile permaculture and agriculture. And we have been trained to building bridges between those two words that were so apart in the previous years. And I think nowadays permaculture is big in France. I know it is getting bigger in all countries, and I think we have to gather, we have to get stronger to make sure that at some point we're going to be powerful enough to change the thing, and we have to raise our voices. I'm not talking about revolution here, but it might be a type of revolution, because what we do is completely political on a daily basis. But we have to be very accurate on what we do, highly professional, show that we can talk about figures, about viability. When we talk about figures, we talk about economy also, but also that we are human beings, and we want human beings to be back at the heart of all systems, including the economical system. And we have to grow stronger and spread the word. And I think most of the organization I know around the world, well, I follow that through the internet, but most of them are doing a tremendous job at the moment, and we have to go on because it's getting bigger and bigger.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Perrine.
Thank you.
And thank you for all your work to explain and help and train people coming to your amazing farm.
Thank you very much, Maddy. And thank you for the magazine, because, you know, at first when we were so desperate for information, our main source of information was Permaculture Magazine.
Thanks.